our primary, I thought was a good thing. And I thought it was good that Bernie was out there, that Hillary was out there. They were giving two different visions. They were out there through all the states. I thought it put both energy on our side. I'll tell you something else I thought it did. It made me proud to be a Democrat. You know, while the Republicans were doing their clown car thing, you know, with who was going to be voted off the island, and then, of course, ended up with a reality star as their standard bearer. I was proud of what Democrats were out there talking about. I thought it was the right thing to do. And in the end, when it was time, I went out there and fought once it was resolved to try to get Hillary elected, and I would have done the same for Bernie, no doubt about it.
Cenk Uygur asks Elizabeth Warren, why didn't you support Sanders? I mean, you're considered the most second lefty progressive person in Congress, and he was running in 2016. From an ideological standpoint, it looks like you would back him over Clinton, and yet that's not what happened. Elizabeth Warren said there was a lot of energy that was dumped into it. She said Sanders was giving his ideas, Clinton was giving her ideas, and it made me proud to be a Democrat. Now, you know what 2016 was like. You know that 2016 was utterly and entirely chaotic and created a split in the party. She also noted that when everything was said and done, then I turned around and backed Clinton in the same way I would have backed Sanders. The reality of it is Warren had a secret letter giving her support to Clinton. So tight was this, meaning she was getting political concessions in order to back Clinton and not back Sanders. This was before even Sanders asked her to run. She had already given over her support, meaning this conversation with Uygur, she's being dishonest. She had already given over the support. It wasn't a dilemma. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an ideological choice. It was a political choice where she was going to get political concessions. Inside secret list of demands, Warren gave Clinton. This is known at this point. That relationship hasn't gone anywhere. Even going into the 2020 election, Hillary Clinton and Warren still continue to communicate and work behind the scenes. Warren didn't necessarily want that to be known to the wider public. Let's be clear. Hillary Clinton hates Sanders. Hillary Clinton is married to Bill Clinton, who told Tom Perez to not let Sanders people take the party. Whether Elizabeth Warren is functioning as a useful idiot, whether she's functioning under her own agency, it's almost immaterial, right? At the end of the day, she's a political actor, and that political actor was crucial into tying down and splitting the vote in the 2020 race. And yeah, I don't absolve Sanders. I've had 20 videos making the point of all the things Sanders did wrong, but I'm just making the very basic point that she was crucial in this race in order to split the vote and give a certain perspective of the election going forward after Super Tuesday. So now, and by the way, just to make another point, you heard what she told Uygur. It made her proud to be a Democrat. She was proud of that 2016 election. Look at what she told someone else. Listen to the PBS reporter. Listen to what the reporter asked her, and listen to what Warren's response is. And again, put this in the context of her being proud to be a Democrat from the 2016 election.
Coming out by Donna Brazile, the former acting chair of the Democratic National Committee, that the campaign of Secretary Hillary Clinton was far more influential at the Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee, than we previously knew. Do you think, though, that what we're learning from Donna Brazile's book suggests that the campaign, that what the Democratic National Committee did, meant this election was rigged?
Yeah, I think it was.
It's a pretty powerful charge.
This is one of my favorite videos. It's Warren's response. She's so sheepish. It's like she knows she's saying something that's naughty. Like if that's where it is. That's what it is. She's saying something that's naughty. And because she's saying something that's naughty, her cadence in it leaks out. And so she gives this sheepish response. I think it was. I think it was. You think it was cheating? Yeah, I think it was. And the reporter doesn't say anything for a while. There's just dead air. And she's like, that's a powerful statement. So in the election that Warren has just said she thought was rigged, later on she came back and said, okay, yeah, screw that. I don't think it's rigged. I got my head right. In that very election, she's telling Cenk Uygur that she was proud to be a Democrat. She was proud of it. She backed Hillary Clinton after the election was over with. None of that stuff was true. Fast forward, 2020. And now you have Elizabeth Warren working hard for that VP spot. She may understand at this point that her best chance of ever becoming president is through an octogenarian that is already having cognitive impairment and that may not make it through even his first term. I would imagine that she is working hard, back channels and everything else. And of course, the whole good old public pressure to try to get Joe Biden to make a horrible choice in choosing Elizabeth Warren for the vice presidential pick. I think a more interesting question is, has a choice already been made? In the same way that Hillary Clinton had already gotten Elizabeth Warren's support, and Warren didn't back Sanders because that support had already been given to her like 2 or 3 years in advance, is it possible that Joe Biden had already also wrapped up Elizabeth Warren's support? The question becomes, what does Elizabeth Warren get for that? Who knows? But she clearly has only had nice words to say about Joe Biden, where she viciously attacked Sanders. And right now, those nice words continue with her making her pitch in the public for Joe Biden to choose one Elizabeth Warren for the vice president of the United States. That would be a horrible choice. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This video is going to have to be relatively swift because I have some work that I need to get done. And the show is going to take place at 12 today, like always. So definitely join us for that one. But I had this video queued up last night. And because I had it queued up last night, I wanted to get it out of the way. Elizabeth Warren is clearly interested in the VP spot, just like Kamala Harris is clearly interested, just like Stacey Abrams is clearly interested, just like I would imagine a host of other people who are interested in this. Joe Biden said he was going to choose a woman. A lot of people, myself included, thought that this may be an African-American woman, but Joe Biden has recently come out saying, I never said it would be a black woman. I just said it would be a woman. You're getting one identity, you're not getting multiples. Now, what does this mean that he's being so explicit as to say, I never said it was going to be a black woman? Is it, for the most part, excluding African-American women at that point? I mean, after all, if Joe Biden had chosen a black woman for the position, that he would have no reason to come out and clarify, oh, by the way, I never said it was going to be a black woman. Who knows? Does that mean that Warren might actually stand a chance in this? Especially if, from the perspective of Joe Biden and that establishment Democratic Party, Warren is considered a reach out. Now, they may not entirely understand that she burned her reputation with the element of the left that Joe Biden would need to be able to get from the standpoint of the Sanders supporter. But it's their perspective of what the left wants, or it's their perspective of what they need in order to kind of put out a faux fig leaf to the left side of the political spectrum. And so it is possible that Warren ends up being that choice. I wouldn't necessarily be entirely shocked by it. By the same token, I don't think it gives them the bang for the buck that I think they're trying to get out of it, especially because she didn't back Sanders. You must understand, entirely for political reasons, even if Warren was in the bag for Joe Biden, the best thing in the world that Warren could have done for her own political career is endorse Sanders. Why? Because ultimately you need, and your credibility in the political process is from, in some part, from people who end up falling on the left part of the political spectrum, but also the wine cave liberals. Those two crowds. But your credibility as a lefty is what you started this race off with, and that's what you ran most of the race until you effectively lost that credibility when they realized you weren't for Medicare for all. But the very basic point is straightforward. You were considered to be the second most progressive member of Congress. Your progressive bona fides is the thing that allows you to have any kind of value. If you do anything to tarnish that, like attacking the person who the left chose, continued to attack the person who the left chose after getting out of the race, gave nice words to the person who for the most part was the antithesis of all of the policies that you ran for, ends up getting called and charged with a rape allegation. And for the woman who says, I believe women, to at that point stop believing women, again, she's working hard to become part of the vice presidential pick. Look, I guess I'm just making the very basic point. She has taken one particular policy after the next in regards to the way she's articulated herself, or she was spoken within this campaign. And over the last several months, a lot of that hostility was directed directly at Sanders. Hell of a lot more than was directed at Biden, somebody who supposedly, ideologically, they're opposed. But again, 2016, a political actor, not an ideological actor. 2020 is no different. The only question is there a behind-the-scenes deal between these two that allows her to, let's say, get a higher viewpoint in regards to the choice of VP. Nevertheless, Warren is doing her best to get Joe Biden's attention. Let's make her pitch.
In the middle of a crisis, we have a chance to think hard about the kind of country we want to be. And that's everything from who's running for school board and what they're fighting for on behalf of our children and our teachers who are trying to get our kids educated, all the way through to President of the United States. This is a moment when it's all out there in front of us. And I'm in this fight, both to fight for the policies, but also to fight for the people who will help us carry out those policies. You know, it's part of the reason you started out by pointing out this is the week that I endorsed Joe Biden. And I'm glad to do that. And it's partly because of policies. Joe Biden has said that he's in favor of canceling a chunk of student loan debt, that he wants to raise Social Security and disability payments, things that I really care a lot about, that he wants to put more restrictions and oversight on money that goes to Wall Street. But it's also about the kind of person you are. And
to put this in perspective, Elizabeth Warren ran this race saying, I'm with Bernie on Medicare for all. Supposedly, she wanted to get rid of student debt. I mean, she was like a hair shorter than Sanders on that. She supposedly wanted the Green New Deal. Like, she ran this race aping one policy of Sanders after the next, even aping his language. When Sanders was making that picture of, would you fight for somebody like you were fighting for yourself? She started even to appropriate that language. I guess I'm making the point that the person who appropriated all of these particular policy positions of Sanders is now basically saying, yeah, I'm backing Joe Biden partially because of policy. I would wager to you that most people don't even know what Joe Biden policies are. When Joe Biden started this race, Joe Biden didn't even have policies. He was just running on the whole go back to the 90s thing. But okay, fair enough. You can make a case that you believe he is better than Trump, especially from the standpoint of policy. So fair enough. Let's let it keep going.
Who you're fighting for. Right now, we have a president of the United States who thinks only about himself.
Let's put this in perspective for the moment. Joe Biden sent people to Wisconsin to an election. Joe Biden's main contention of the vote tally is African Americans. African Americans are uniquely situated, or at the very least uniquely die in this. Meaning, in Chicago, you had like 70% of the people that end up dying were African Americans. We have disproportionately dying and getting sick, massively so, in part because of economic factors, also in part because of health factors, like high blood pressure, diabetes, and some of these other illnesses that creates complications with the disease or the virus itself. Joe Biden was perfectly willing, the guy who you're calling empathetic and everything else, that guy openly at no point called for the shutdown of the Wisconsin election, sent people, his constituency, African Americans that are much higher susceptibility to dying from this particular virus, sent them to the polls. Why? It's a contrived date. It wasn't necessarily that the election had to take place that day. In this very specific case, Joe Biden was terrified that he couldn't wrap up the election. Meaning he didn't want election in Wisconsin postponed for 2 months, even though it would have been healthier for his population, for the population in general, if that election was postponed. If he was confident in his chances of winning that race, he would have just postponed the election. It's a contrived date. Instead, he makes some ridiculous, specious argument about at no point since the Civil War did we stop elections. We stopped an election on 9/11. Multiple elections were postponed. In this particular election cycle. The democratic process didn't fall off of his axles. The world is okay. Joe Biden was just willing to risk those lives in order to wrap up the election as soon as possible. That's all it boiled down to. So let's just be very clear when we make this argument, no empathy for others, when the candidate who you just endorsed is A, being charged with a rape allegation, hey, what happened to believing women, but also was willing to send people to potential death in order to get him over the finish line sooner than what he would have otherwise potentially made it.
Who has no empathy for other human beings. Joe Biden is a man who cares about others. I've seen him up close. I saw him when he came here to Boston after the bombings. And he's a man who lost a wife, lost a child, lost another child, an adult child. He comforted families that had lost loved ones in a terrorist bombing. And he did it from the heart, not for show, but from the heart. That's the kind of man that in a crisis, you want to have leading our country. That's the kind of...
Just so we're clear, this is the same man that has been poking people in the chest, called somebody a woman, a dog-faced pony soldier and a liar. In one case, called a guy fat and challenged him to a push-up contest. In another case, couldn't remember where he was, couldn't remember Obama's name. I guess I'm making the point to you that I don't know this person. I understand that Joe Biden has lost all these family members. Irrelevant. That sounds harsh, but it's irrelevant. All of that's just trying to gin up this kind of empathetic feeling for a particular person. I have no idea who Joe Biden is. I can only go by what Joe Biden does. And the fact that he had people die in his family, I feel bad for him over it. That's a personal thing where I feel bad for him. This is a political conversation, not a personal conversation. I don't care. My point is that doesn't matter. I'm pointing to the candidate that is currently running in this race that in the middle of a pandemic said he would veto Medicare for all. That's the person who I am talking about, who is running with a healthcare policy that's going to leave hundreds of thousands of people to die over the course of a decade. I guess I'm making a point to you that I don't know who this empathetic person is that you are referring to, especially not in this election campaign.
A man that every day when people are sitting down at the table and talking about policies and whether or not the next money that goes out the door is going to help Wall Street or it's going to help the low-wage workers who are the essential workers who are keeping our country going. I want a man with a good heart making that decision and pulling people into that decision. And that's why I support Joe Biden. And that's why I'm glad to say every chance I get, I hope everyone.
That's why I'm supporting Joe Biden. Nothing to do with the VP pick. Nothing to do with the VP pick at all. Nope. I'm just supporting him because I support him because I think he's just an empathetic, great guy. He is the man for the job. The man for the job that she's talking about. Last interview that I've seen of him. And this is, look, you could find 1,000 of these videos laying around. I'm just picking the last one.
We have to make sure everyone has access to maintain affordable health insurance coverage. We should be making it easier, not harder, to make sure make sense to, I'll put it another way. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. We have to make...
Let me say this, and I'll end it on this. Don't tell me that a person has a good heart. I can evaluate whether or not a person has a good heart, whether or not they're empathetic, whether or not they care, who they care for, where their biases are, based on the policies that they push for. If a person cares and is empathetic and he wants to ensure that people have access to health care, regardless of the amount of money you have in your pocket, regardless of any other factor or any other circumstance, you're an American citizen. We've evolved as a society. Congratulations. And expand Medicare for all to each and every person. You don't have to tell me that person has a good heart. I can see it in the policies that the person is pushing for. If the guy is trying to expand Social Security, if the guy is trying to pay off student loans, if the guy is trying to do all of these issues, increasing minimum wage, if he's doing this stuff, then you don't have to tell me he has a good heart. I can see it espoused in the policies that the person is pushing and the things that the person is saying. You telling me that doesn't mean anything. Elizabeth Warren is pushing for this guy, bland policy guy, who basically just says the most inane things that don't necessarily mean anything at all. And what it boils down to, Elizabeth Warren has already said, I would love to be the vice president. All of this stuff is based on I will do whatever I need to do and kiss all the ass I need to kiss if that means Joe Biden will select me to be the vice president. That's where it begins and ends. Warren is a political actor. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.